You wake up to the sound of a bump in the night. It's pitch black, other than the ambient reflection of a street light filtering through your window. You hold your breath and listen for any more creaks or bumps. Your eyes fixed on the door at the end of your bedroom, waiting. For 3 decades, nights like these were common for the residents of Wichita, Kansas, as a real-life boogeyman was in their midst. Charlie Otero, a high school sophomore, was walking home from school with his little brother and sister, Danny and Carmen. When they arrived home, they realized something was off. The family dog was outside in the cold, and when he entered the house, the kitchen was still a mess from breakfast that morning. Despite calling out for his family, no one replied. Charlie ascended the stairs and walked down the hall and opened the bedroom door. This moment will forever change his life. His parents were both bound up and lifeless. Charlie called the police, and when they arrived, they would also find Charles' 9-year-old brother, Joseph Jr., dead in his room, and also his 11-year-old sister Josephine, hanging dead from the water pipe in the basement. This was the most tragic murder scene in Wichita history, and the city was in complete and utter shock. Unfortunately, this would only be the beginning of the nightmare. "21-year-old Catherine Wright was walking home one day, and she caught the eye of a monster. By stalking her, he discovered where she lives, and when she left home again, he moved in, severing the phone line and breaking in through her side porch door. He crept inside her closet and waited. Finally, she came home, but she was also with her brother, 19-year-old Kevin Bright. This did not stop him. He burst out of the closet with a gun drawn and forced them to comply with his demands. He forced Kevin to tie up his sister, but Kevin fought back as the killer was trying to tie him up. In the struggle, Kevin almost snatched the gun away from the killer, but failed and was shot twice in the head. The killer then moved to Catherine. He tried strangling her, but it was not effective, so he brandished his knife and began stabbing her. While preoccupied with Catherine, Kevin, miraculously, was still alive and fled the scene to get help. The killer, seeing that Kevin had run away, fled as well. Catherine was rushed to the hospital, and despite receiving multiple surgeries and blood transfusions, she succumbed to her injuries and died. Kevin would go on to survive his injuries. This event would further shape the community, as this nightmare would continue. As months go by, the police appear to have made progress in the murder of the Oteros. and have arrested 3 men they feel are the perpetrators of the crime. Citizens in Wichita were beginning to feel a sense of relief as the nightmare that plagued their community would finally be gone, that they could finally heal. That thin veil of relief would soon be ripped away from them by the smallest discovery. At the Wichita Public Library, a piece of paper was stashed away in an engineering textbook, and when it was discovered, the police were immediately informed. The message on the paper was left by the true killer of the Otero family, and the killer made it abundantly clear that he would not stand for others taking the glory of his crime. I can't stop it, so the monster goes on and hurt me as well as society. It's a big, complicated game, putting the victim's number down, following them, checking on them, and waiting in the dark. Waiting. The code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. Little Steve Relford was playing outside when a man approached him. The man showed him a photograph of a mother with her son and asked the boy if he had seen them. The little boy said no and returned home. Later, while watching TV with his 2 other siblings, there was a knock at the door. Steve ran to open the door and saw it was the same man from before. He explained to the boy that he was a detective, and Steve let him inside. He then entered the house, turned off the television, and closed the blinds. This is when the children's mother, 24-year-old Shirley Vian, discovered the man in her house. The man drew a gun and forced Shirley's 3 young children into the bathroom and locked them inside. The man proceeded to strangle Shirley to death. Once the mother was dead, the killer then turned his attention to the children in the bathroom. Perturbed by the ringing telephone, the killer decided it was time to leave and left the children locked inside the bathroom. One child managed to escape through the window to find help. Caught completely off guard, the police were baffled by the 3-year time gap between BTK's murders, and were debating whether or not to go public that there is a serial killer who was responsible for 7 murders over the last 3 years. Ultimately, they decided to not give him the credit in the hopes that he would try to communicate more with them. BTK would communicate with them in the most devastating way possible.
Yes, you will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing, Nancy Fox.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't understand you. What is your address?
843 South Pershing.
Police were dispatched to the home, and their worst fears were confirmed. 25-year-old secretary Nancy Fox was lying face down, strangled to death. After this, the police continued to suppress the information that there was a serial killer. This caused BTK to begin writing more to the police, with a letter written to them saying,
"How many people do I have to kill before I get some publicity?"
This shows BTK's desire for recognition and fame for his horrible crimes. The police ultimately decided that in the interest of not having another Nancy Fox, finally went public that the 7 murders were committed by a single killer. In a single night, the city of Wichita was in full-on panic. A place where people trusted their neighbors and didn't lock their doors became a place of anxious paranoia. BTK appeared to have been satisfied by this recognition and went into another long, dormant phase. Bill Wegerle was returning home when he saw something puzzling. A man was driving his vehicle and passed him going down the street. Unable to make out the appearance of the man driving, Bill quickly returned home, expecting to hear the sound of his wife Vicky playing the piano, as she often did. Bill was met instead with eerie silence. When searching the house, he finds his 2-year-old son alone in the living room. Alarmed by this, Bill continues to search until he reaches the bedroom, where he discovers his wife Vicky lying on the floor, strangled to death. Because the crime scene was disrupted due to Bill trying to save Vicky's life, police did not take any crime scene photos, and her case went unsolved for almost 20 years. The city of Wichita has quieted down as time moved into the 21st century. The name BTK, while infamous, was now well into the rearview mirror of most people's thoughts. The Wichita Eagle wrote a 30th anniversary article on BTK and brought attention to a new book called Nightmare in Wichita. Little did the writer of this story know this would cause a long dormant monster to reveal himself once again. The Wichita Eagle would receive a letter from an individual named Bill Thomas Kilmer. Inside was something that would cause Wichita to descend into a nightmare once again. They would find Vicky Wegerle's driver's license, something that was missing from the crime scene in 1986. He was back. BTK was not going to let some author write his story, so he began communicating with the police through small ads in the newspaper. And this is where BTK would finally make a fatal mistake. Becoming frustrated with the difficulty of sending information back and forth, he asked the police a question. If he were to send them a floppy disk, would the police be able to trace it? The police, seeing the opportunity, lied and responded it was impossible. And BTK believed them and sent them a floppy disk. This would be his downfall. The metadata on the floppy disk would reveal a location, Christ Lutheran Church, as well as a name, Dennis. This information would lead them to a man named Dennis Rader, who was the church president. The police were able to obtain DNA from Dennis's daughter, and it was almost a perfect match to DNA left at all BTK crime scenes. This would be the end of BTK. Dennis Rader, who was considered to be a pillar in the community, who was a married father with 2 children, was the serial killer. In 2005, Dennis was convicted of murdering 10 people, including Maureen Hedge in 1985 and Dolores Davis in 1991, and he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences.